The peaceful dawn, the twin suns of Elysium, painted the crystal gardens in shades of gold and purple as 6-year-old Emma Chen chased her pet fox through the shimmering formations. The crystalline structures grew naturally from the planet's unique soil, creating a wonderland of transparent spires and rainbow bridges that sparkled in the morning light. Emma's laughter echoed through the garden as Spark, her silver-furred companion, darted between the crystal formations with playful energy. "Spark, wait for me," Emma called, her small hands reaching toward the fox as it paused on a crystal ledge. The creature's intelligent eyes watched the child with obvious affection before bounding down to nuzzle against her cheek. Emma giggled and scratched behind Spark's pointed ears, a gesture that made the fox purr like a tiny engine. Terra Nova Colony had been humanity's pride for 15 years. Unlike the industrial settlements on other worlds, this community had been built as a haven for artists, scientists, and families who wanted to explore the gentler side of space colonization. The colonists had chosen Elysium specifically for its peaceful nature and stunning beauty. No dangerous predators, no harsh weather, no valuable resources that might attract corporate exploitation. Just pure, unspoiled paradise where humans could live in harmony with the native ecosystem. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the kitchen window of their dome-shaped home, watching her daughter play in the gardens. Sarah was the colony's chief xenobiologist, specializing in the study of Elysium's unique crystal-based life forms. The crystals weren't just beautiful decorations. They were living organisms that formed complex networks beneath the planet's surface. Sarah had spent years documenting their growth patterns and communication methods, work that had earned her recognition throughout human space. Emma's energy level is directly proportional to the brightness of the suns, Sarah commented, as her husband Tom joined her at the window. Tom Chen was the colony's chief engineer, responsible for maintaining the delicate balance between human technology and Elysium's natural systems. Their settlement used clean fusion power and recycled every molecule of waste to avoid disturbing the planet's ecosystem. "She's been excited about the crystal singing ceremony tomorrow," Tom replied, wrapping his arms around his wife's waist. The crystal singing was a natural phenomenon that occurred when Elysium's formations resonated with specific electromagnetic frequencies. The colonists had learned to predict these events and gathered to experience the haunting melodies that filled the air. For Emma, it was pure magic. The morning proceeded with the gentle rhythm that defined life on Terra Nova. Dr. Michael Rodriguez tended to his experimental garden where he grew earth vegetables in Elysium's unique soil. Artist Julia Martinez worked on her latest sculpture, a piece that incorporated living crystals into its structure. Teacher Daniel Kim prepared lessons for the colony's 37 children, all of whom would attend the one-room school that served as the center of their small community. Emma had finished her breakfast and was back in the crystal gardens, this time accompanied by several other children. They played a game called Crystal Tag, where they had to touch different colored formations while avoiding the harmless but ticklish native insects that lived among the spires. Emma was particularly good at this game because Spark seemed to understand the rules and would lead her to the safest paths. "Look, Spark," Emma whispered, pointing to a cluster of blue crystals that were beginning to glow softly. "They're getting ready to sing." The fox tilted its head as if listening to sounds only it could hear. The crystal's glow intensified slightly, and Emma clapped her hands in delight. Tomorrow's ceremony would be especially beautiful. Unknown to the peaceful colonists, 3 massive warships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Elysium system. The vessels belonged to the Korthok Dominion, an ancient empire that had ruled 17 star systems for over 1,000 years. The Korthok were a proud species, tall and imposing, with scaled skin and eyes like burning coals. They had built their empire through conquest and maintained it through fear. General Razek stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the sensor readings from the human colony. The Korthok general was a veteran of dozens of campaigns, his scarred hide bearing witness to centuries of warfare. To him, the peaceful settlement below represented everything he despised about younger species: weakness, sentiment, and the foolish belief that the universe was a safe place for the defenseless. Analysis complete, General reported his intelligence. Officer, 1,200 human civilians, no military installations, no orbital defenses. They appear to be engaged in scientific research and agriculture. Rozek's lips curled in disgust. Typical human arrogance. They establish settlements in our expansion zone without permission, then act surprised when consequences arrive. The Korthak Empire had been expanding slowly but steadily for centuries, claiming new star systems as their natural right. The fact that humans had colonized Elysium 23 years ago meant nothing to them. If the Dominion wanted the system, they would take it. "Shall we establish communication protocols, General?" asked the communications officer. "Standard conquest. Procedures require a surrender demand." "Negative," Razek replied coldly. "This is a pest control operation, not a military action. These humans are vermin that have infested our territory. We will cleanse the infestation and move on to more important matters." Back on Elysium, Emma was showing Spark her favorite crystal formation, a delicate spiral that grew near the center of the garden. The crystal was nearly as tall as she was, and its surface reflected her image in dozens of different angles. Emma pressed her small hand against its smooth surface and felt the gentle vibration that meant the crystal was alive and healthy. "Mama says the crystals talk to each other," Emma told Spark seriously. "They tell each other stories about the stars and the people who come to visit." The fox seemed to nod in understanding, though it was probably just responding to the tone of her voice. The morning air was filled with the sounds of a thriving community. Children's laughter mixed with the hum of machinery and the gentle chiming of crystal formations. Dr. Chen was explaining the day's research schedule to her team. Engineer Tom was running diagnostics on the colony's power systems. Teacher Kim was setting up his outdoor classroom under the shade of a crystal arch. None of them noticed the three dark shapes beginning their descent through Elysium's atmosphere. The Korthok ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like black knives against the planet's colorful sky. General Razek checked his weapons systems one final time, then gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. "Commence planetary cleansing. Leave no structure intact, no survivors." The first energy beams struck the colony's administration building while Emma was still playing in the crystal gardens. The explosion was so sudden and violent that she didn't immediately understand what had happened. One moment she was laughing with Spark, the next she was knocked to the ground by a wave of heat and sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Emma sat up slowly, her ears ringing, and saw that the pretty building where her parents worked was gone. In its place was a crater of melted metal and burning debris. Spark was pressed against her side, trembling with fear and confusion. The fox's instincts were screaming that something terrible was happening, but there was nowhere to run. "Mama," Emma called out, her voice small and scared. "Papa." But her parents were already running toward the gardens. along with every other adult in the colony. They could see the alien ships now, dark and menacing against the peaceful sky, and they knew with horrible certainty that their paradise was about to become a nightmare. The Korthok bombardment continued with methodical precision. The school vanished in a pillar of flame. The medical center was reduced to smoking rubble. The workshops, the laboratories, the carefully tended gardens, all of it was being systematically destroyed by beings who saw no value in human life or achievement. Asterisk. Dr. Sarah Chen reached the Crystal Gardens just as the third wave of attacks began. She could see Emma crouching beside a shattered crystal formation, holding Spark in her arms and crying. The sight of her daughter's terror filled Sarah with a rage she had never felt before, followed immediately by a mother's desperate need to protect her child. "Emma, Emma, come to Mama," Sarah called, running through the ruins of the garden. Crystal fragments crunched under her feet as she navigated the maze of broken formations. Behind her, she could hear Tom shouting orders to the other colonists, trying to organize some kind of evacuation. But they all knew it was hopeless. The ships above them were too fast, too powerful, and too determined to leave any survivors. Emma looked up at the sound of her mother's voice and started to run toward her. Spark leaped from her arms and bounded ahead, as if the fox understood that they needed to reach safety as quickly as possible. For a moment, it seemed like they might make it. Mother and daughter were only 30 feet apart when the fourth attack wave began. General Razak had been watching the extermination through his ship's sensors, noting the efficiency of his weapons and the complete helplessness of the humans below. It was exactly what he had expected from such a primitive species. They ran around like insects when their nest was disturbed, accomplishing nothing except to prolong their suffering. Then something caught his attention. His targeting computer had identified a small human child running through the ruins, accompanied by what appeared to be a native animal. The general's tactical display showed that the child was moving toward an adult female, presumably its parent. For a moment, Razek felt something that might have been recognition, even among the Korthok family. Bonds were considered sacred, but the moment passed quickly. Humans were not Korthok. They were vermin, and vermin did not deserve the same considerations as civilized beings. If anything, the scene below reinforced his contempt for the species. What kind of creature brought its offspring to live in unauthorized territory, then acted surprised when stronger beings claimed what was rightfully theirs? "Target the child," Razek ordered his weapons officer. "Make it quick." The energy beam struck the ground between Emma and her mother with surgical precision. The explosion was smaller than the others, but it was perfectly placed to achieve maximum psychological impact. Emma Chen, age 6, died instantly. Spark, who had been running beside her, was thrown clear by the blast and landed near a cluster of broken crystals, injured but alive. Dr. Sarah Chun's scream could be heard even over the sound of the bombardment. She fell to her knees beside her daughter's body, her scientific mind unable to process the reality of what had just happened. Emma had been laughing just minutes ago. She had been planning to attend tomorrow's crystal singing ceremony. She had been looking forward to showing her drawings to the other children. Now she was gone, and the universe suddenly seemed like a much darker place. Asterisk, the Crimson Hour, the destruction of Terra Nova colony, took exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, the Crystal Gardens were fields of glass shards. The residential domes were craters of twisted metal, and the research facilities were scattered across the landscape like broken toys. Of the 1,200 colonists who had called Elysium home, Only one survived the initial attack. Marcus Webb had been working alone in the colony's communication center when the first explosions shook the ground. As the settlement's chief communications officer, Marcus was responsible for maintaining contact with Earth and coordinating supply shipments. His office was located in a reinforced bunker designed to withstand natural disasters. Not military attacks, but the extra shielding had saved his life. When the Korthok weapons reduced the surrounding buildings to rubble, Marcus crawled through the wreckage of his equipment, his hands shaking as he tried to activate the emergency beacon. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, and his left arm hung uselessly at his side. But he knew he had to get a message out. The galaxy needed to know what had happened here. Someone needed to tell the story of Emma Chen and the 1,000 other innocents who had been murdered for the crime of existing. The beacon's power cell was cracked but still functional. Marcus managed to record a brief message before the Korthok ships began their final sweep of the colony. His words were simple but devastating. "This is Marcus Webb, Terra Nova Colony. We are under attack by unknown aliens. They're killing everyone, the children. God help us, they're killing the children. Emma Chen, age 6, murdered in cold blood. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them we tried to run. Tell them we never had a chance." The message pod launched just as General Rozek's ships completed their orbital bombardment. Marcus Webb died in the collapse of his bunker. But his final act of defiance was already racing toward the hyperspace relay point that would carry news of the massacre to human space. General Rozek surveyed the devastation with satisfaction. The operation had been textbook perfect, quick, efficient, and thorough. His weapons had eliminated every trace of human presence on Elysium, while leaving the planet's resources intact for future Korthok exploitation. The crystal formations were damaged but would regenerate within a few years. The fusion reactors had been completely vaporized, leaving no dangerous radiation. Even the orbital debris had been cleared away by his ship's particle beams. "Casualties?" Rozek asked his tactical officer. "0. Korthok losses, General. All human. Vermin eliminated. No survivors detected." Rozek nodded approvingly. "Excellent. Log this as a routine expansion operation. Pest control in preparation for Korthok colonization." He paused to study the tactical display one final time, then added almost as an afterthought, "Note that the human infestation was more extensive than initially reported. Recommend increased vigilance for similar unauthorized settlements." The 3 warships rose from Elysium's atmosphere and jumped back into hyperspace, leaving behind a world that had been transformed from paradise to graveyard in less than 20 minutes. The crystal formations that had once sung with harmonic beauty now lay in shattered fragments across the landscape. The gardens where children had played were fields of glass and ash. The homes where families had built their dreams were craters, filled with twisted metal and broken promises. But among the ruins, one small life still struggled to survive. Spark, Emma's pet fox, had been thrown clear of the explosion that killed his young companion. The animal's left hind leg was broken, and burns covered much of his silver fur, but he was alive. More importantly, he was intelligent enough to understand that Emma was gone and that the world had become a dangerous place. Spark limped through the devastation, calling out in the high-pitched whine that foxes use to communicate distress. He searched for Emma among the ruins, not understanding why she didn't answer. He found her favorite crystal formation, now reduced to a pile of glittering fragments, and began to dig frantically with his good front paw. Perhaps if he dug deep, Enough. He could find his friend and bring her back to play in the gardens. The Fox's grieving would have continued indefinitely, but the emergency beacon in Marcus Webb's message pod had included a secondary signal designed to attract rescue ships. 3 days after the massacre, a human patrol vessel detected the distress call and changed course to investigate. Captain Lisa Rodriguez had been conducting a routine survey mission when her sensors picked up the automated SOS from Elysium. "Looks like someone's in trouble," Captain Rodriguez told her crew as they dropped out of hyperspace. Sensors show massive energy weapon damage across the colony site. This wasn't an accident. The patrol ship's medical team found Spark first, dehydrated and weak, but still guarding the spot where Emma had died. The Fox's loyalty to his dead companion moved the hardened Space Marines to tears. They carefully lifted the injured animal and carried him to their ship's medical bay, where Dr. Jennifer Park worked to save his life. What kind of monsters would do this? Dr. Park asked as she treated Spark's wounds. This wasn't a military target. It was a research colony. Families lived here. Children played here. Captain Rodriguez had no answer. She had served in the Human Defense Force for 20 years and had seen her share of violence, but nothing in her experience had prepared her for the systematic slaughter of an entire peaceful colony. The fact that the attackers had specifically targeted non-combatants made it even worse. This wasn't war, it was genocide. The message pod's data recorder provided the answers they needed. Marcus Webb's final transmission told the story of the attack in heartbreaking detail. The crew of the patrol ship watched in stunned silence as the recording showed Emma Chen's last moments. The little girl had been running toward her mother when the alien energy beam struck her down. She had been carrying nothing more dangerous than a toy fox, and her only crime had been existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Get me Earth Defense Command," Captain Rodriguez ordered. "Priority 1 transmission. They need to see this immediately." The message reached Earth 36 hours later at 0347 hours local time. Admiral Victoria Stone was asleep in her quarters at Defense Command when the emergency alert awakened her. Victoria was a career military officer who had risen through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. She had commanded fleets, negotiated treaties, and made the hard decisions that kept human civilization safe from the dangers of the galaxy, but nothing in her experience had prepared her. For the recording from Elysium, Victoria watched the footage of Emma Chen's death 3 times before she could trust herself to speak. The little girl's face was so innocent, so full of life and wonder. She had been playing in a garden, laughing with her pet fox, when the aliens decided she needed to die. The casual cruelty of it was almost incomprehensible. "Get me President Rodriguez," Victoria said to her communications officer. "Emergency priority. Wake her up if necessary." President Elena Rodriguez was in her private study, reviewing economic reports from the outer colonies when the call came through. Elena had been elected on a platform of peaceful expansion and diplomatic cooperation. She believed that humanity's future lay in exploration and discovery, not conquest and war. The colonies were thriving, trade was expanding, and first contact with alien species had been limited but positive. The recording from Elysium changed everything. Elena watched Emma Chen die and felt something break inside her chest. This wasn't just an attack on a colony, it was an attack on everything humanity stood for. The little girl in the recording could have been her own daughter, her own granddaughter. The parents crying over their child's body could have been any family in human space who did this. Alina asked Admiral Stone. Intelligence is still analyzing the attack patterns, but preliminary reports suggest the Korthok Dominion. They're an expansionist empire that's been active in this sector for centuries. They've had minimal contact with human space until now. Alina felt her grief hardening into something colder and more dangerous. What are our options? Limited, Madam President. The Dominion is old and powerful. They control 17 star systems and have military technology that's roughly equivalent to our own. A direct confrontation would be costly. Costly. Alina repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. Admiral, they murdered a 6-year-old child. They committed genocide against 1,200 innocent people. What exactly would you consider an appropriate response? Admiral Stone had been waiting for this question. Full mobilization, Madam President. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have. We make them pay for what they did to that little girl. Alina nodded slowly. Do it, and Admiral, I want the whole galaxy to know why we're coming. I want them to understand that this is what happens when you kill human children. The news of the Elysium massacre spread through human space like wildfire. The recording of Emma Chen's death was broadcast on every news network, viewed by billions of people who had never heard of Terra Nova Colony until it was destroyed. The image of a 6-year-old girl being murdered by alien weapons became the rallying cry for humanity's response. Maria Chen, Emma's grandmother, became the face of humanity's grief. The elderly woman had lost her son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter in a single day. When reporters asked her what she wanted to say to the aliens who had destroyed her family, Maria's answer was simple: "You killed my baby. You killed my sweet little Emma. Now the whole human race is going to make you pay." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across 200 human worlds, factories retooled for war production, shipyards that had been building cargo vessels, and passenger liners began constructing warships. Citizens who had never held a weapon volunteered for military service. The peaceful expansion that had characterized human space for generations was replaced by a singular focus on preparing for war. But the most significant change was in humanity's attitude toward the galaxy itself. Before Elysium, humans had seen space as a vast frontier filled with wonders to explore and friends to discover. After Emma Chen's death, they realized that the universe was a dangerous place where innocents could be murdered for the convenience of stronger predators. The Korthak Dominion had made the mistake of teaching humanity to be afraid. And as they would soon discover, frightened humans were far more dangerous than peaceful ones. The message was clear. Emma Chen's death would be avenged, and the galaxy would learn that human children were not acceptable casualties in alien expansion plans. The price of innocence was about to be paid in full. Asterisk.